The long-term hydrologic situation in the West is and always has been cyclical. We have record years of rainfall and runoff, such as in 2011 and 2023, interspersed with record years of drought. Think 2002 and 2012. While we fully understand that precipitation and weather patterns are variable, our ever-increasing demands are not, with more people moving to the interior West, thereby increasing demands for irrigation, municipal, and industrial uses. And our variable precipitation patterns, both water shortages through periods of drought and flooding through periods of abundance, have left our communities vulnerable, which is especially so when we do not adequately engage in long-term water planning. It seems to be the common sentiment for some in Washington, D.C., that if they can block enough water projects from being built, perhaps the weather will stabilize and shortages and drought will become a thing of the past. What a bizarre view, and one that history shows us is not only wrong-headed, but downright dangerous. It is quite baffling to see how many people are willing to further this unreasonable narrative solely for the sake of justifying more federal control of our natural resources. Nevertheless, false narratives are alive and well in our nation's capital. We know in Wyoming that both drought and flood resiliency depend on the ability of our state and communities to prepare for and respond to all water-related events. We can do so only when we engage in the long-term water planning of which I spoke a moment ago. In Wyoming, we have some of the most resilient and workable water laws on the books, ensuring that we are able to effectively and responsibly manage our own water resources. Our laws allow us to marry the regulatory side of water management with the actual wet water hydrological side of things based upon our deep understanding of precipitation, weather, vegetation, cropping patterns, soils, and demands that are unique to Wyoming. Our state engineer's office, the Board of Control, irrigation districts, and municipalities understand water in Wyoming and, as a result, are better able to manage this critically important resource than any Washington, D.C. bureaucrat ever could. Local control is the key because local knowledge and understanding is the key. With that being said, I'm incredibly grateful that in 1902, Congress passed the Reclamation Act, ensuring that we could construct Pathfinder Reservoir, Buffalo Bill Reservoir, Boysen Reservoir, and other facilities. The Reclamation Act has been critical to meeting our needs during times of hydrologic boom and bust, with our reservoirs making the difference between being able to grow crops versus total destruction of our agricultural industry without such storage. With that being said, it is just a fact that we in Wyoming are more attuned to the economic impacts of federal land grabs and the ongoing efforts to undo the programs and infrastructure that have been so beneficial to Wyoming and other western states. I think most of us believe that we need more water storage constructed in the West, not less, and that federal red tape is not a boon, but a bust when it comes to meeting long-term water demands. It goes without saying that we in Wyoming are better at understanding and caring for our communities than the federal government could ever be. That's why it's so important that I, as your representative, dedicate my efforts to cutting the red tape, expanding local autonomy, and pushing for more regional opportunities, not less. I was able to do this recently with the introduction of the Pilot Butte Power Plant Conveyance Act, which should pass out of the Natural Resource Committee just this week. The Pilot Butte Power Plant Conveyance Act requires the Bureau of Reclamation to enter into good faith negotiations with the Mid-Valley Irrigation District for the conveyance of the Pilot Butte Power Plant located in Pavilion, Wyoming. I believe that this is a critical step towards improving responsible resource management and transferring responsibility and authority to those who are best situated to operate this critical infrastructure. Mid-Valley Irrigation District is intimately familiar with the intricacies of water management and distribution in this area. Updating and repairing this hydro plant will expand the state's portfolio, allowing for a more holistic approach to resource management. This will help Wyoming to optimize water usage, balancing the needs of agriculture, industry, and the environment more effectively. Transferring Pilot Butte Power Plant to Mid-Valley Irrigation District is a move that will boost Wyoming economies and is a decision that reflects the values of decentralization, self-determination, and self-reliance. While Wyoming epitomizes the ideal when it comes to responsible management of water, no state captures the failed strategy and blueprint for water management quite like the state of California, who wastes tremendous amounts of water each year, misdirects the water assets that it has, and effectively blocks the construction and development of the very infrastructure needed to meet their long-term water demands. Reports from local outlets in California confirm that their overburdensome environmental rules prevent anything and everything from being built. The hurdles they face are endless. By the time state regulators are finally convinced that standards for bird and fish hospitality have been met, literally decades have gone by. That is why California has essentially the same water infrastructure in place today with 40 million people as they had in the 1960s with 16 million people. This situation is especially a tragedy in a year like 2023, a year of abundant precipitation. California lost literally millions of acre-feet of water this year because there were not enough facilities to store it. My concern is that the current federal administration seeks to make all of us more like the state of California and less like the state of Wyoming. The permitting process is way too long, way too burdensome, and way too unnecessary. They pursue an agenda that they claim is to benefit our fisheries and wildlife, but does the exact opposite. The federal agencies seek to impose an impossible burden of proof on our private property owners while seeking to use the Clean Water Act to control water quantity and use by claiming that such things as irrigation ditches are navigable waters of the United States. While the United States Supreme Court recently issued the Sackett decision severely constraining the EPA's authority under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, the bureaucrats haven't lost their ambition to control massive swaths of private property in the name of protecting the environment, which we know is not something they do well. I believe that it is imperative that we continue to pursue projects and policies to empower local communities, including through helping our irrigation districts and municipalities manage their own water, all the while working to minimize the bureaucratic hoops to jump through. I recently had the opportunity to write a letter to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, asking them to secure a regional general permit for a number of irrigation districts in the state. For those of you involved in that ask, please keep me updated and help my staff understand how they can best assist you in moving forward. As Wyoming's lone member of the House of Representatives, please know that I care about protecting the resources that we need to thrive. I will continue to fight against federal overreach and will gladly work with each and every one of you to ensure that we can continue to use the abundant resources we have in Wyoming to make your lives better. Thank you for having me, and have a great meeting.